Okay, everyone. I hope you are feeling good after topic 1. And now we're going to move on to topic 2, which is the renal system. We're going to show you the basics of how urine is made. Because, Keaton, they have another subject that they need this information for, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Those students that are doing NRS 171, the pathophysiology subject, we're teaching the anatomy and physiology of our normal body systems in BMS, and then we're making it more complicated and talking about the things that can go wrong as part of those systems in our health challenges stream, which for the students doing BMS 175 is alongside NRS 171 with patients moyo. So it's really important that we have this foundational understanding of what the renal system is and how it works, to then be able to understand what can go wrong. I would argue that the renal system is one of the body's most complex systems, and so having a really solid understanding of the very basics and foundations of the system can set you up to really be a great nurse and understand the impact of this system and when things go wrong in the system.
Absolutely, and you know, most of the drugs that you give to people, they are removed from the body via the renal system. So it's good to understand.
Absolutely, Nat.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So remember, you're going to get sick of me saying this. Make sure you create answers to all of these as your after lecture activity, okay? Because this is what we're going to be assessing you on.
I like to go back to these as well, Nat. So I like to watch the videos that you've done and lecture slides, and then go back and go, oh, list and identify the organs of the renal system. Yep, I can do that. These are my answers. Define the functions of the renal system. Oh, I can't quite remember that one. I'm going to revisit those couple of slides. So I think it's a really good reflection activity at the end of the videos as well.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. I mean, you need to, in order to remember this stuff, you need to be doing things. And one way you remember it is by writing things down or talking to someone about it. Absolutely. Otherwise, it just will not stick.
And sometimes we don't even realise how much we've actually taken on and understand until we try to explain it to someone else. And that's where we go, oh my gosh, I know a lot more than what I thought I did.
Absolutely. By you recreating the knowledge, it shows how much you understand, and also shows how much maybe you don't understand and you need to go back. But you need to do that activity. Otherwise, you don't know what you know, essentially. Yeah. All right, so we're going to look at the renal system. These are the organs of the renal system. And as you can see, 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 bladder, and 1 urethra. So 2, 2, 1, 1. And what sits up the top of the kidney like a hat? The adrenal gland. Yeah? All right. So the major function of the kidney, of the renal system, is to make urine. Now, urine is used, so we are water animals, so we use water to get rid of our rubbish and the rubbish that our cells make. So we've evolved that way to get rid of our wastes via water. And even if you don't drink any fluid at all, your body will continue to do that. So that's why you can only survive a certain amount of time without water, but you can survive a lot longer without food, because this is an automatic process that your body does to get rid of waste via fluid, okay? We're going to go through that later, but just so you know, something automatically that you do. Now, you will see this later, but for now, I just want to focus on the problem, the issue of urine formation. Now, we're going to go look at pH, osmolarity, blood pressure and hormones and blood glucose later on. Okay, just be aware now that the kidneys, the major function is urine production, but the kidney also does lots of other things as well. All right, just so where you know where the kidneys are, look, the poor little things, They have a little bit of protection, but if you want to give someone like a punch down this way, you could really injure them, correct? So the kidneys are kind of protected by the ribs, but not all of them, so you could still damage them, yeah? You can still damage. If you fall over and, you know, you hit yourself there, like on the side of the pavement or something, you can still damage your kidneys.
And it's really important to know where they are, Nat, because when we're doing our abdominal assessment or our head-to-toe assessment, we need to know where the organs are in that cavity so that we can understand what we're palpating, what we're feeling, and what might be normal or abnormal.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, one sits a bit lower than the other because, you know, we're not symmetrical. Here's another picture showing the location of all the organs, you know, of the kidney, where they are. See, this is the aorta here. And we're going to go look at the blood supply a little bit later on. But this is the aorta. And then see each kidney receives blood. There, so blood in, blood out. And here is another picture showing where they sit. So the kidneys, when we did 165, we went through all the different layers of protection. So the heart has a double-sided kind of blanket covering it. Each lung has a double-sided blanket covering it. But all the organs in the abdominal cavity, they share one blanket. Now the kidneys don't get access to the blanket, so they don't get access to the peritoneum. Okay, they sit behind it, so they're called retroperitoneum. They sit behind the blanket. So here we go, this is your back. This is your spine. Look how tiny your spinal cord is. Yeah, sit behind. The only thing that they have to protect them is like a capsule because they don't have their own kind of serous membrane. Here we go, blood supply. If you did 165 or if you didn't do 165, the aorta comes out of the left ventricle and it goes up and around and then comes down. So this is going to be your abdominal aorta. Okay, abdominal aorta. And then here's your diaphragm. It goes all the way down like a big long tube of hose. And then you've got right and left renal artery. Of course, it's everything related to the patient. The patient's left, not your left, patient's left. It's all got to do with the patient, not you. All right, so let's have a look at how we make urine. It all starts with blood going into the kidneys. So here we go, blood comes down here and it goes bang into the kidneys. So you've got the renal arteries branching off the abdominal aorta. Now make sure you do the little activity here. Here we go. Now look at this. The kidney gets 1.2 litres of blood per minute. That's a lot of blood going into the kidney, okay? Now, when you see the blood going into the kidney, those blood vessels get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until they reach a structure called the nephron. So we go smaller, 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 smaller until we end up here. Okay, so you've got blood supply going in, smaller, 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 smaller until the blood kind of interfaces with these little structures called the nephron. Now, the nephron is what makes your urine. Okay, so little nephrons, this is a little machine that makes your urine. If you understand how the nephron works, you will understand how the kidney works, because your kidney is made up of many, lots and lots of these little machines. So 1 million nephrons. Right, so this, as you can see here, I just want you to understand that blood goes in, swirls around here, and then takes this and it goes around the nephron, and then it goes back out again. Okay, I know it's a little bit convoluted, the pathway that it takes. Here's another picture. This is blood coming from the artery, swirls around in here in this little network, and then it goes back out again, and then it kind of sits alongside the nephron and then eventually goes to the veins. Okay, so just be mindful of that's the path that blood kind of takes. And it goes in, and then it's going to work with the nephron as it's sitting alongside of it all the way until it gets to the end.
This is a really great image, Nat, and really important for us to understand what's happening and what the process is here.
Yeah, because you need to understand the blood flow in order to understand what's happening to the blood because we're making urine from the blood. Yeah. All right, so I'm a very simple person, so I'm going to break it down very, very simply so we can understand the whole process. So we have 3 processes involved in the formation of urine. And let's have a look at the first part. The first part is filtration. So you've got the blood coming in, then back out again, and then kind of interacting with the nephron, and then it goes out to the vein. So here's my schematic representation of the nephron, okay? All I did was like grab the convoluted tubes and just straighten them all out. The same with the blood. Okay. So blood, we know that blood goes in to this is called the Bowman's capsule. It's like a little cup, and this is called the glomerulus. Don't worry too much about that. It's just that blood goes in, hangs around here for a while, then goes back out, and then it works alongside the nephron to eventually get to the vein. Whatever is in here or whatever lands in the capsule and in the nephron will eventually become urine. But the first process
and that's our body's waste, isn't it, Nat? Because it's like a big waste excreting machine. So
correct.
Anything that we don't need in the body, that's what's getting out. So that's why our drugs are excreted through this process. Additional potassium's regulated, which is obviously a complicated process, but we basically need to understand here that it's the body's way of getting rid of waste. So if we're not putting fluid in so that the body can get rid of the waste, we're going to get a build-up of toxins and waste in the body, which is going to have a range of different negative effects on our body systems.
Absolutely. You can't have waste, and I'll go through this in a minute, but you can't have waste hanging around the blood. It ultimately be no good. It will eventually kill you. So this is why it's important for your kidneys are always doing this. Always. And you have no control over it. You will always do it. All right. So the first process in making urine is filtration. Glomerular filtration, because this is called the glomerulus. That's the only thing is filtration. So you've got things that are floating around in your blood. Now, your blood is made up of plasma and formed elements. So you've got plasma is the fluid part, and then you've got things dissolved in that. So little things, okay? So little things, like little molecules, can go through here. This is because blood goes in, but there's a little section here of the capillary where it has holes in it. And this is called a filtration membrane. It's like a sieve. So these bits don't have holes. This is like a sieve, and then these bits don't have holes. Okay? So small things like water, glucose, amino acids, ions, and nitrogenous weights, they go from the blood and into the nephron. They kind of go through these holes. But big things, such as red blood cells or albumin, which is a blood protein, they're too big. They don't fall through the hole. So they keep going. Right? Maybe not that fast, but they do keep going. So little things fall through, big things keep going. Now that is the filtration process. Okay? Filtration process. Now let's focus on what I'm talking about when I'm talking about waste. All right? So waste, nitrogenous wastes, are the small molecules that end up in here. They fall through the hole. Oops. What do I mean when I talk about nitrogenous waste? A nitrogenous waste is a molecule that we need to get rid of that contains nitrogen. All right? Now, the major one, all right, the major one is that what happens is that we use carbon dioxides proteins and nucleic acids, we eat them, and then we convert them. Now, when we are converting molecules, we end up with a molecule that's waste that contains nitrogen. All right? So when we break down things like carbon, when we break down a protein, when we break down a carbohydrate, when we break down things that we've eaten, we end up with things that we can use, but we also end up with things that are wastes. And those wastes that contain nitrogen are classified as nitrogenous wastes. Now, we need to get rid of nitrogen because nitrogen ends up forming ammonia. Okay, so we're breaking down a protein. We end up with things that we use and we end up with waste. Waste is nitrogen. Nitrogen is a problem because it makes ammonia. Ammonia is toxic, means that it kills cells and it stuffs around with our pH. So we need to get rid of this. Okay? Now, ammonia floats around and then eventually ends up in the liver, and the liver converts the ammonia to urea. Now, urea is what ends up in urine. The major nitrogenous waste is urea, and that's the one that we pull, we filter out, and out it goes in the nephron. Keaton.
And one of the ways that we can determine how well our patients' kidneys are working are by testing their blood for how much urea is in there, so that we can see that the kidneys are doing their job by getting rid of the excess urea and filtering that out. If we've got high levels of urea in the patient's blood, it means the kidneys aren't working effectively to get rid of that.
Correct. That's right. So, this is the thing that we've just evolved with. So our bodies know that nitrogen-containing molecules are a problem because the conversion to ammonia is just a chemical reaction that just happens automatically. So then the liver will automatically, convert it to something that is more water-soluble, and so we can get rid of it. And that happens all the time. All right. That is the end of that little piece. How easy is that? So this is the first part that we looked at. So making urine has 3 parts. The first part that we looked at today is glomerular filtration. Okay.